Oh, what a day. What a long, long day it's been. Get the cherry bubbly here tonight. That's what we're rocking and rolling with. And yeah, we got a show. We got a show, don't you know? So I hope you're ready to tune in. I hope my daughter doesn't wake up. That would really put a damper on things. She's sleeping. It's her birthday tomorrow. She's going to be 6. I'm very excited. So yeah. I'll let this sort of linger for a minute and then we'll sort of dive into the meat of it. I will say this, and I'll probably have to repeat this in a little bit. We'll look at comments at the end, and I would appreciate it if you were respectful and kind in the comments, or better yet, if you can't be constructive or nice in the comments, just don't say anything at all. That's what I mean to say. So I want you to express your opinion, whether you disagree with me or not, like whatever you feel like, you are more than welcome to like add to the conversation, but do me a favor, keep it respectful. Seriously, keep it respectful. And for any of my mods, I have some live chat mods. If you're live on the chat, please, like, just keep your eye out for anything that's just unnecessary. I think that's what we're really trying to steer clear of. We don't want unnecessary sort of nonsense. Yeah. I prepared a statement. Usually when I do this, I just go live off the cuff, always unscripted, always unscripted. Every time anytime I'm reading something, it's usually there's an interview or whatever. I've never like scripted what it is that I wanted to say, but I really thought, especially because I have such ADHD, that it would, for the benefit of this, that I need to like write out. I want to write out what I say and what I feel, and I'm going to read from that. I'm not going to deviate from it. I'm going to read it, and it's very, very long. So keep that in mind. Okay. That's something to keep in mind. So get your coffee out. Should have drank some coffee before I did this. Actually, probably better that I didn't. Sort of stalling right now. I'm just going to let it, I'm going to wait just a few minutes before we really kick into gear here. We'll go to our sponsor in just a moment. Actually, that's a great way to sort of start the show. Oh, now I remember what I wanted to say. Shit, I forgot to add it to the thing. Let me actually do that real quick while we're here, while everybody is coming in and whatnot. I did not see any. I saw a little bit of live footage from the. Oh yeah, here we go. Mm-hmm. Okay, there we go. Now I made a note of that. I didn't have that in my thing before. Now I have that. I didn't see any of the live shows, but I saw a little bit of footage on YouTube. Band sounded great. That's nice. Thank you. I'm going to need it. Someone just texted me good luck. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. No, what I wrote here, the reason why I initially said what I said on Facebook, and then I waited a few days. I read so many comments on my page, elsewhere, yada, yada, yada. And it like really was good to just sort of pull back and sort of like look at everything, kind of like look at everything and just really help me to sort of, sit in what I feel and know that, hey, this is what I want to say. I got something to say too, and I'm going to say it. But since some of you are here, let's start off the show the right kind of way. So, even though this is kind of a very special, serious episode, let's start it off the right way.
Jeff is gonna talk about the Misfits right now. He's a nerd about this stuff, obsessed anyhow. Jeff never shuts his face, always needs to talk. Might be some weight if he went out for a walk. Do you think Danzig cares? He doesn't care. He's not into ranch.
Okay, and then additionally, because once I start, I'm not going to stop, and I'm going to go. It's going to be like that filibuster that just happened for 25 hours. I'm just going to go. I'm going to read my statement until the statement is over. I really should get the ranch. I think I need the ranch with me. Hold on 1 second. Let me get the ranch. There we go. I need my blackened ranch for this episode. Oh, evil ranch. It's so evil. We also should probably, let's get out the kazoo just in case we need to kazoo something. I'll accent when I read my thing. I'm going to accent it with a couple of just in case I need to. Okay, let's go. Let me just say real quick, much like Danzig's sticky black ranch, you know what else is sticky? Our sponsor, Riot Stickers. Riot Stickers is the sponsor of the Frumess channel. And if you go to riotstickers.com/Frumess, that's FRUMESS. Link is down in the description. You can get 1,000 stickers for $79. Okay, 1,000 stickers, $79, free shipping. Sharpie rules. Great guy to work with. You can't go wrong with Riot Stickers. Their stickers are printed on vinyl, so they're waterproof, and they have a UV protective coating that protects them from the sun and keeps them from, getting all, that way. You know what I mean? That way. And you can get anything printed on them. Although I don't think Sharpie's going to let you print any Black Suns or Hitlers or nothing. At least I want to hope not. I don't think Sharpie would do that. So, any like non-Nazi designs would be good, right? For Riot Stickers. That would be a good thing. Riotstickers.com/Frumess. Can't go wrong. Riot Stickers, 1,000 stickers for $79. That's 7 cents a sticker. So do it now. Riotstickers.com.
We make stickers, banners, and buttons too. Posters and promo cards. There's nothing we can't print for you. From stage backdrops to bass drum heads. We can print on shirts. We can print on hats. We can print on pants. Cheap prices and high quality. Quick turnaround times and free shipping. We also offer free artwork support. Great customer service and so much more. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb. Riotstickers.com. Riot Stickers, we are the bomb.
Oh, emotional support, Danzig Ranch. Oh shit, that's true. All right, okay. We're gonna start now. I'm ready to start. I'm ready to begin. It was a 10-minute warm-up. We're all warmed up. We're ready to go. Now, again, I just want to reiterate, and I think I have some mods there. Cousin Jody Ramone, he's a mod. I have mods, okay? Mods, if you see anything that's just really outrageous, like offensive, like deep, like just not savory for the live chat, how we do things here, please just get rid of it, okay? Everybody else, I invite you to have a conversation in the live chat. Please keep it civil, keep it respectful, exchanging of ideas. One thing, I'm not going to look at any of the live comments until after I finish reading the thing that I wrote. So I'm going to read the thing that I wrote, and then afterwards we will look at some comments and go through. Okay, that's the plan. So I'm not going to acknowledge the chat. I'm going to hide it. I'm not even going to look at it. I don't want to. I just want to say what it is that I got to say. Now, obviously, everybody here knows that I love Glenn Danzig's artistic output. I do. Misfits, Samhain, Danzig. I love it all. I really do. We joke, we make fun, but we love this shit. We love this shit deeply. I love this shit deeply. Everything that I write comes from the bottom of my heart. Some of you hate me and find me really annoying, and that's totally okay. But, just know that what I'm saying from a genuine place. I'm not saying this. One thing I can't stand, this idea of like virtue signaling, or whatever, social justice. I mean, it's such bullshit to me. Okay. So I'm just going to go in. Ready? Let's begin. Hiding. I can't see anything now. I can't see the live chat. Now I'm reading. I'm reading from a script. Okay. For the first time ever. Let's start this off by getting this out of the way. If you are not bothered by Glenn Danzig using a neo-Nazi Black Sun logo on his merch, then this video, it's not for you. If you're annoyed that others like myself find issue with it, this video is still not for you. Seriously, turn it off right now and stop watching. You will either feel indifferent or annoyed or infuriated by everything that I'm going to say. So just don't bother. Seriously, why bother? Do not watch this video. You could shut it off. If you are still here, then you are possibly here because you want to hate watch this. And that's also totally fine. I hate watch things sometimes. It's very natural to want to hate watch. That can also be very enjoyable. So if you want to hate watch this, great. That's fine. But just know that I'm not here for you. I'm not here for you at all. If you want to throw tomatoes, throw your tomatoes. If you want to snark, you can snark. Or perhaps you are watching because you want to hear a clear perspective of what someone else who doesn't agree with you has to say. I'm not here to change your minds or wag my finger at you. I don't have the energy for you to argue or debate. It's not worth it or worth my time. I will only say this to you out there who hate watches this or disagrees. This is the only thing I'm going to say. Seriously. Would you feel comfortable wearing this Danzig shirt with a neo-Nazi Black Sun symbol in public? Would you wear it at a punk show? Would you display it in your home or office? And I already know the answer of that because I've seen people sharing pictures that they've, whatever. Would you do any of these things? Would you display it at your home office? Would you wear it at a punk show? Would you walk around in public wearing this symbol? Would you wear it at work, at the office, in front of company? Would you take the time to go, no, well, you see, it's like these other sun symbols, which are like pagan or Viking, yada, 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 it's not like neo-Nazi, no, you don't understand, okay? You're like totally like overreacting to this, okay? Like don't be so sensitive. I'm not a Nazi. Danzig's not a Nazi, okay? Like this symbol, totally fine. You know what I mean? That's the only question that I would ask you to ask yourself, honestly. And again, if there is, some kind of hesitation, then perhaps there is some weight in what I'm saying here. And that requires you to honestly ask yourself that question. Would I wear this shirt in public? Would I wear this at a punk show? Would wearing this shirt get my ass beat at a punk show? Would I wear it, or get me into a fight? But that's what I'm saying here. Okay. Glenn himself, Glenn Danzig, has always espoused in interviews that he is an independent thinker who doesn't compromise what he believes in. And if there's something inside of you that doesn't sit right with this design, or if you're too afraid to say how you feel for fear of ridicule or judgment, then maybe you should stick around and watch this. Maybe it's okay to be confused. I felt for a few days, I felt very confused. Initially I was like, I know where I'm staking my tent poles, like 1 billion%. I know that this is not right. There's something not right about this. But then I sat and I really thought about it. I'm like, God. And why did I think about it? Because I care about this stuff. Because we talk about it. I mean, how many nights have we spent talking about this stuff? And then all of a sudden this happens. It's weird, man. It's friggin' weird. So if there is something inside of you that doesn't sit right with this, but you're too afraid to say how you feel for fear of ridicule or judgment, then again, maybe you should stick around and watch. For those of you who outwardly feel weird, conflicted, or upset, this video is for you. You are like me. And I'm not here to convince you that Danzig sucks now and that he needs to be canceled or held accountable or something. I'm really not. That's not what this is about either. I don't know what Glenn Danzig's intentions were with this. And at the end of the day, intention doesn't really matter. What matters is perception. Chew on that one too. Think about the perception of this, not about the intention. Oh, he didn't mean to do it. Ultimately, when I sum all this up, this is a video about how I feel about this stuff as not only a fan, but frankly, as a Jew. Okay? So anything, here's the thing. Anything that I say doesn't truly matter ultimately, because this is a tiny little channel. It's a drop in the bucket. As I said in my very first live stream 5 years ago, almost to the month, I'm a nobody bozo on the internet sharing his thoughts. And I want to explore this area that has gone overlooked for a long time. I'm not just talking about this one thing. I'm talking about this, we kind of always skirt around some of these, tougher to handle, areas of this stuff. And I'm interested in engaging with people who want to explore this with me. So these are my opinions. And that's why you're here. You're curious to hear what my particular opinion is on the situation. After all, I'm still a fan, and that's not going to change. I've covered many aspects of Glenn Danzig's career. Why should this be any different? Is he infallible? Hell no. It's news and it's controversial. Why should it be ignored? There's also a sense of irony here for a few reasons, but mainly in that for years, people have come to me with this stuff about Danzig, everybody, a lot of whataboutism, which we're going to talk about a lot more later, especially after everything that went down with Michael Graves. And I've always sort of compartmentalized a lot of it. As I said, we kind of skirt by it and compartmentalize it, and I compartmentalize a lot of what I will share with you in this video. For me, the most shocking, surprising aspect of this doesn't lie with Glenn Danzig deliberately selling merchandise featuring himself in a neo-Nazi Black Sun symbol on a t-shirt. Okay. In the same way that I have studied Glenn's music and career and its minutia, Glenn too is also well studied on these matters. He knows what this is, and he made a decision to put it out on his merch. And it's possible that he anticipated this controversy, perhaps as a sort of, hey, look at how upset all these idiots are going to get when I do this. That sort of thing. And doing this is very much in line with what his attitude has always been, right? He loves to piss people off, and he loves to be a contrarian or to go against the grain as some form of rebellion. He's always like, us, the fans, were like, hey, where's the Samhain on vinyl? Can we get some Samhain on vinyl? Here is our money. You could print Samhain on every single color, every single spectrum color of the rainbow, and each one of us is going to buy 15 copies of it, for, $39.99. And, and Glenn says, oh, you want some Samhain on vinyl? Here's the recent end of my catalog that no one is asking for on vinyl. Yuck. It's like, here's Black Acid Devil, here's Danzig 666. Here's Danzig 777. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's just literally, fans, give us Samhain, Danzig. Here's all my least popular albums. You know what I mean? He's a contrarian, more importantly, he seems to love to be perceived in this way. He seems to want to be viewed as controversial, ready at a moment's notice to speak his mind and show everyone that he doesn't give a fuck. and we see it in interviews all the time. Recently, just being a blowhard about cancel culture and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And like he's on stage, the stage banner from the recent shows, and here's the thing. We can stop here. We could stop right now. I could stop this show right now for you right now. Okay. If you don't want to sit through one of my long, boorish tirades that this is going to be, you can sort of chalk it up to that, except in the most, cringe, misguided, foolish way possible, just that he really, wants to be viewed as controversial and ready at a moment's notice to speak his mind and show everyone that he doesn't give a fuck. That's it. That's really it. You could walk away, I think, from this video now with that kind of conception. If you want to continue on with me as we go deeper and deeper, then buckle up, buy the ticket, take the ride, because we're about to go down a very long rabbit hole. And I pose this question: what makes this so different from those other times? From similar examples. And what do I mean by that? I mean, there is a long laundry list of allusions to either fascist or Nazi or whatever, like references or, stylistic choices, whatever you want to call it, in lyrics and, the naming of things in Glenn Danzig's career, whether he's doing something as a joke, whether, whatever it may be. Let's look at what some of those things were. Starting with, he has a stage name. His last name is not Danzig, it's Anzalone, or however you pronounce it. But as I can't take credit for this, it's Nick. Shout out to Nick from the Stooges group. I'm also a huge Stooges fan, and Nick brought this to my attention. Danzig, the ANZ in Danzig is Anzalone, and that Danzig, it's kind of like a play on his last name. And at some point in, I don't know, 76, 77, maybe even early, maybe it was 75, I don't know. At some point, he decided this is going to be my stage name, naming himself after Danzig, which is that was the Nazis' gateway into Poland, right? When they invaded Poland through Danzig. There's also, if you look in the book Scream With Me, on some of those early flyers for Misfits shows and victim shows, there are swastikas on the flyers. So there, I believe there's photos of SS bolts on engineer boots. I think Glenn's engineer boots. Then you have all sorts of various lyrics, and we're gonna talk about the lyrics in a minute. You have Lords of the Left Hand. You have White Devil's Rise, Little Whip. Some say We Are 138. I don't know. Some say not. Left Hand Black, Live from the Black Hand Side, which is an album title. Violent World, Let the Day Begin. Then there's the, meant to be so goofy, ridiculous, over the top Danzig's book collection segment from the Danzig home video, where Glenn, very, very, I guess it's kind of like infamous, iconic, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's not, but like it sure gets parodied a lot. It's embedded in some kind of pop culture sense, because, this idea of like, welcome to my book collection. I've seen so many of those parodies on YouTube, and they're great. And Glenn talks about, the occult roots of Nazism or whatever. Every child should have this book. And he, playfully laughs. In the Lost Tracks box set, on the art in the back, there is a little thing about Hitler as a black magician. You have the use of the Iron Cross in his logo. A lot of bands use the Iron Cross logo. I don't even really, I used to wear an Iron Cross in the independent trucker hat. The use of a rebel flag, which isn't fascist, but definitely, that was a poor design choice. He had the rebel flag on his logo for merch. And now most recently, the use of the Black Sun. And I might be leaving some stuff out. That's just kind of a general overview. But let's go back to the lyrics for a second, because I think this is really important to note, and the reason why we're talking about the lyrics is because what I've noticed in the comments is that lyrics get brought up so much in this discourse. in the vitriol and the discourse and whatnot. And I think it's important to sort of highlight this about lyrics in general. The flexibility of artistic interpretation through lyrics is important to note. Even though that I may personally detest certain lyrical subject matter, like Lords of the Left Hand, I also understand that artists approach subjects from a point of view that is not meant to be theirs, as if to write it from a character's point of view. It's no different than when a screenwriter is writing the point of view of a serial killer, glorifying violence, or a racist character shouting their racist beliefs. Just because the writer wrote those things does not necessarily reflect what the writer personally believes. It does not. It should not be synonymous with the writer. The writer is creating a character. I am a writer. I've written characters that don't reflect me personally, but I've explored themes through writing those characters. So I understand very much from that perspective. Art, here's the thing. Art is meant to be challenging. It's meant to be a space where almost anything can be explored, tasteful or not. But it is not a black and white thing either. There are shades of gray that give it nuance. And I don't think it's always entirely accurate to equate an artist with their choice of subject matter. As I just said, part of the power of creating art is being able to explore ideas and concepts that aren't synonymous with the creator behind it, but a writer or a director is able to project that writing through an actor's performance in a movie that creates some sort of layers of separation from the creative mind behind the work and the stuff that's happening. So the guy who's playing the serial killer, carrying out the serial killing on screen in this grisly, gory way that was thought up by the writer-director. The writer-director is separated by this, not only this barrier of the movie itself, but the fact that the actor is the one that is executing this creative vision that somebody else thought up. And therefore, it's kind of easier to separate that person from their work. For a singer or a stand-up comedian or an actor, that's more difficult because the artist is directly invoking, channeling, performing the song, the lyrics, the music, the comedy, the dance, the dialogue. They themselves are the instrument. And so therefore, whatever it is more kind of synonymous with them. There's not as many layers of separation, Glenn's lyrics have always been dark, sardonic, rebellious, cynical, violent, evil, angry, and disillusioned, going all the way back to the beginning. He liked to write about the dark, seedy underbelly of Americana and the world through an almost guttural beat poetry along the lines of Charles Bukowski. At first, he seemed to be really into heavily veiled metaphors, taking real life events and exploring the dark ideas and concepts behind them. In some cases, it's meant to simply be shocking and offensive, as Glenn has expressed in interviews. Two early examples of this would be Glenn's reoccurring contempt for the Kennedys in Bullet. He always talks about how much he doesn't like the Kennedys. And he expressed that, very passionately in Bullet, and a song about death, literally death incarnate, in Last Caress. I'm using these two examples because they are not as abstract nor require heavier interpretation. There are other songs like Theme for a Jackal or maybe Cough Cool, or even we went down a rabbit hole and a half on Hybrid Moments, and that was so much fun. Turned out it was about pig turtles. Those fucking pig turtles. But I liked my interpretation. The interpretation we came up with, that was so much better. The idea of the hybrid moment. I really like that. But the lyrics are so abstract, you know what I mean? But like Bullet and Last Caress, they're more literal, They're not as literal as, say, Return of the Fly. Return of the Fly is literally reading the back of a box, but, neither this or that. By the same coin, just because I can write about something doesn't automatically mean that I should. It doesn't mean I should write about it, but it also shouldn't stop me from artistically exploring whatever it is that I want to say. Isn't that part of that is the First Amendment, right? Artistic expression, as is stand-up comedy, is sacred, and it should be protected at all costs, even when it veers into places that some might find problematic. And I'll tell you, there is a ton of stand-up comedy that I personally find problematic. Do I think it should be protected? Absolutely. Just because I don't like it or I don't think it's great doesn't mean it's still an artistic expression, even if I think a certain way about it critically. Even look at the song like Skulls. We were talking about Last Caress and Bullet. Let's talk about Skulls too. This guy in the song, he's talking about how he needs skulls, how he wants you to send them to him, the different types of skulls that he needs on his wall for hanging. He likes hanging skulls in his room. I want your skull. I need your skull. He wants to put the skulls on his wall. Another example from one of my favorite bands, and perhaps the ultimate example. It's not from a Misfits song, but a TSOL song called Code Blue. Does anybody know Code Blue? It's a great punk rock anthem. In fact, we were talking about punk rock anthems the other day on the show, and I totally neglected to even notate Code Blue, because Code Blue really is that could be a contender for one of the great punk rock anthems. It's not as well known as Blitzkrieg Bop or God Save the Queen, but it is just as punk, if you ask me. In regards to songs like Code Blue, there's a term for all matters of this sort of stuff, and you've heard it a million times. Okay, you're gonna know exactly what you're gonna be like. Oh yeah, I've heard that before. When I say that, it's all meant to be tongue in cheek, quote unquote. It's flippant, sarcastic, and it's funny to be singing about something so gruesome and shocking. It's not meant to be taken seriously. I want your skull. I need your skull. Like, I got something to say. President's bullet-ridden body in the street. All of these things are tongue in cheek. It's the subversion of topics that should wait. It is the subversion of topics that should be serious, but not taking them at face value. So these topics are serious topics, but because they're subversive, you can't take it at face value. So Jack Grisham from TSOL, he's not singing about how he literally wants to fuck the dead. It's ironic. It's playful in a demented way and self-aware of such a ridiculous notion, because that's what it is. It's presenting you with a ridiculous notion. The main character of the song would rather fool around with the dead than try and pursue someone living because of social baggage and dynamics that are involved. Some might argue that there are darker interpretations of the lyrics, and they're definitely there. But I got pizza with Jack the last time TSOL played in New York City with the Garden at Irving Plaza, and he personally told me that this was the artistic interpretation. Really shocking songs that have depth and wit behind them are always the best ones. And in some ways, as I said before, Code Blue might be the ultimate punk rock song. It really might. For me, however, for my personal taste, I have found that there is a line. We're going to talk about the line. And I think, and this is something I want you to rhetorically ask yourself right now as you're listening to me, blabber on and on and on about. Is there a line? Is there a line for you? What is the line for you? For me, I found there's a line. For most everyone, I think there is some sort of line, except for maybe Gigi Allen. I don't know what that guy's line. I'm not sure that there is any line for Gigi Allen. Or look at a band like, I can't say this on YouTube, but the band that's known as AXCX, with the initials AC. I'm not sure that they have a line either, but here's my question when talking about stuff like this, artistically, where's the elegance in something that's so lazy? Anyone can shit their pants. Anyone can pluck the lowest hanging fruit. Ask yourself, what is your line? Is there a line that you cannot cross or that you dare not go? If you don't have one, it might be possible that you just have not found it yet. But look, we're going to come back to the idea of the line later on. Right now, instead, I want to talk about this quote. I have a quote for you. It's a famous quote from Mark Twain that is relevant not only to a song like Bullet, but also speaks to the reaction of people regarding the Black Sun on the Danzig merch. Quote unquote from Mark Twain, comedy is tragedy plus time. In the context of 1977 to 1978, the song Bullet, if it was written in the last 20 years, like concurrently, would be like if Glenn was writing something similar about 9/11. For the silent generation, many of whom would be parents of baby boomers, which is Glenn's generation. Glenn's generation is baby boomers. Glenn's parents' generation were the silent generation. So for the silent generation, the assassination of JFK was a worldwide shocking event that changed everything, just as 9/11 did in the year 2001. It was a cultural trauma that brought a dark cloud with it. And obviously, you know, some of you, or I don't know, maybe somebody who's watching this remembers the JFK assassination. I doubt that, but I know a lot of you remember 9/11, right? It was a deep cultural trauma. You know, I just bought this case of bubbly, and this is flat as fuck, dude. Where are all the bubbles, man? That's really upsetting. In any case, it was a cultural trauma that brought a dark cloud with it, just as the horrors of war and the Holocaust had done even earlier. And here is a young 18-year-old Glenn Danzig writing a free verse poem about JFK getting his head blown off and his wife becoming dependent on her next husband's fortune by whoring herself out to him. This was a means of rebellion that fit nicely into the concepts of punk rock and what it stood for in 77, 78, right? Where something was horrific and terrible for one generation, it becomes an opportunity for counterculture shock value and rebellion for the next. So what was horrifying for the silent generation is an opportunity for counterculture and shock for the and rebellion for the baby boomer generation. You know, it's synonymous with youth, particularly sophomoric youth. Sophomoric youth encapsulates attitudes from younger generations before they have experienced some of the things in life that can change one's perspective. You know, how like when you're younger, you haven't experienced life like, you know, tearing you down, or like just the mechanics of what it takes to, you know, keep a family afloat, you know, just stuff like that. And so you're, you think differently. Your brain isn't even, you know, your brain isn't developed. They say your brain doesn't get developed until it's 25. But, you know, this is how you get bands like the Ramones, the Sex Pistols, Blondie, Susie Sue, Motorhead, the Stooges, the Dead Boys, the Misfits, and more engaging in quote unquote trolling before the word even had a name by wearing Nazi gear and singing tongue-in-cheek songs about them. So like all these bands, in one way or another, they were rocking swastikas and, you know, Nazi gear and this, that, and the other in various ways, you know, and singing songs about them. While it's not admired, this part of punk rock history is widely recognized and accepted within the context of the times. A mischievous, rebellious intention to shock with the tragic horrors of World War II and fascism layered by 30 years of distance from what had occurred. So because you have 30 years of distance from the horrors of World War II and fascism, you know, this you can make light of it. You know, it's funny to shock and awe. You know, let's wear swastikas, let's shock everybody. I think everybody has a pretty good understanding of that. This isn't a defense or a justification of the phenomena, but an understanding of what was behind the cultural underpinnings of this underground grassroots movement that was punk rock. The definition of sophomoric youth refers to young people, typically adolescents. I kind of already described this, but I'll read it anyway. The definition of sophomoric youth refers to young people, typically adolescents or those in early adulthood, whose behavior and attitudes are marked by overconfidence, immaturity, and superficial sense of wisdom. The term applies when they might present themselves as knowledgeable or self-assured. Their insights and judgments often lack depth and experience. It captures the paradox of appearing wise, from the Greek sophos for wise, while actually being in many ways foolish or naive, from the Greek word moros, for foolish, sophomoric. And we are seeing that right now with Gen Z, Generation Z, and their regard for events like 9/11. Many of them were not old enough to really understand the gravity of this tragedy, as we said. So there's a generational age gap, just in the way that there was a generational age gap between the silent generation and the baby boomers, and rocking swastikas, and and the dawn of punk rock. So there's a generation gap that, coupled with the meme humor that the internet has evolved in the last 2 decades, it's left Gen Z and potentially future generations making light of 9/11, making fun of 9/11, in the same sort of way that Glenn Danzig rips JFK and Jackie and Bullet. If Glenn was 18 in the year 2011, perhaps he would have written a song called Airplane about 9/11. It's interesting to think that as a young man trying to write a song that would inspire shock, awe, and disgust, he begins Last Caress with, "I've got something to say." It's not just a declaration of character boasting of the horrible things that he has done. It's a double entendre. It's whether it's conscious or unconscious of a young Glenn Danzig looking to express himself artistically through grisly lyrics and a twisted sense of humor. The ultimate takeaway seems to be that nothing is sacred when shock and awe are the intended outcome. And I wouldn't say that that is a binary idea. It's a fluid spectrum that is super subjective from person to person and their lived experiences. That's why the line is not the same for every person. Remember, we were talking about the line? The line, it's not the same. My line is not the same as your line. Maybe it is. I mean, I don't know. We'd have to sit and have a conversation about it. But my line, it's not the same as your line. It's a different line, So many who have commented on my post, because I got a lot of engagement, much more than I thought I would have, actually, on my posts, saying that I think his choices sucked. Those posts, they don't seem to understand or care where I'm coming from. And hey, that is okay. It's totally okay if you don't understand. But just as they are so worked up about anyone who would criticize Glenn Danzig for using neo-Nazi images in his merch, I too am free to criticize when that doesn't sit well with me, because it's crossed my line. Even Jerry Only in the past has found limits at one point. This seems to have changed since, where he had altered the lyrics to Last Caress when singing it live. As I discussed, I had Mike Hideous on the show some years back, and we were discussing that on the show. And I do wonder, I don't think we'll ever know. I wonder, especially considering that I know Jerry used to have he had like one of those death head crossbone pins, which is a Nazi crossbone pin that he had pinned to the back of his collar. But in the 70s, I wonder what he thinks of this now. I wonder if this controversy has reached him, and what he thinks and how it reflects on, the Misfits brand or whatever. Maybe he doesn't give a shit. I don't know. But for Jerry, for whatever his reasons, right or wrong, it did not sit well with him to sing the lyrics of Last Caress as they were originally written at that time. But hey, listen, it's not like Glenn hasn't done that in the past either. He chose to alter his lyrics to Teenagers from Mars when Bobby Steele and the Undead opened for him in 1981 at the Ritz. The other day, so after this thing had started, I had so many people reach out to me. A lot of people, different people, have reached out to me, some through Facebook, some through Instagram, some through text message. I typically don't check the Facebook inbox for Facebook or for Instagram, but in this case, because of whatever the situation, and I've just been talking with people, and some people who I've been talking to who don't necessarily share my exact point of view, I got a bit of whataboutism from someone. They brought up Kiss particularly, and the SS bolts in their logo, because the end of Kiss is the two SS bolts are the same SS bolts as the Nazis. And hey, that was, that's a great point, and I can only speak from my subjective perspective, which, by the way, I think that might be a really great name for a podcast or like a different like format for a show. Subjective perspective. I really like that a lot. I can only speak from my subjective perspective as a Jew. And, it's a contradiction. And that's the thing. There's lots of them. There's lots of contradictions. And the thing about contradictions is they do not necessarily cancel out or justify something else. Let's take a look at another example. What about the members of NWA? Does everybody know what NWA stands for? What about the members of NWA using that name, which is the N word followed by with attitude, right? So if you could picture what that means, should NWA be scrutinized in the same way that Glenn Danzig is being scrutinized for using a neo-Nazi Black Sun logo on his merch? Because NWA was selling, I don't know if I'm sure there's somewhere you could probably buy an NWA shirt through the proper avenues. NWA was selling NWA t-shirts. So is there a difference? Should they be scrutinized the same way that Glenn Danzig was being scrutinized? Is it different? Here's a related hypothetical. So this is a hypothetical. What I just said is true. You had a band called NWA and they were selling t-shirts called with NWA, but here's a more hypothetical version. What if there was a band with all Black members and they were selling t-shirts with N-bombs on them? It just was the N-bomb. It wasn't NWA. It wasn't an abbreviation of NWA. It just had N-bombs on them. And then let's contrast that further. Okay. So besides that all Black band that sells the t-shirts with the N-bomb on them, the word, they sell that t-shirt. There's another band, but they're all white members and they're selling t-shirts with N-bombs on them as well. But they also go around maybe, and they're also burning crosses on a neighbor's lawn or something. And here's my question to you. Is there a difference? Is there a difference between those two groups of people? Let's say they weren't burning crosses. Let's just say that the white band was selling the t-shirts with the N-bombs on them and the Black band was selling t-shirts with the N-bombs on them. Is there a difference? Do you see a difference? Here's another one. How about this? What is the difference between Joey Ramone singing Today Your Love, Tomorrow the World and Johnny Ramone playing it on guitar? Is there a difference? And again, I would love for you, please answer the question in the comments if you want to. You don't have to. But, add to the live chat. Respectfully, of course. Is there a difference? Do you see a difference? So again, those two questions. What is the difference between the Black band and the white band, which is the hypothetical, and then what is the difference between Joey Ramone singing Today Your Love, Tomorrow the World and Johnny Ramone playing it on guitar? What's the difference between Joey Ramone and Johnny Ramone? Is there a difference between those two guys besides the fact that they're two different people? What's the difference between both of those people, right? What about Dee Dee's intention when writing Today Your Love, Tomorrow the World? Dee Dee, who's half German, grew up in post-World War II Germany on a U.S. military base. His dad was an American, military officer, and his mom was a German housewife. His childhood, he's talked about this in the book PKM by Legs McNeil and Gillian Anderson and Gillian McCain. Sorry, I always say Anderson. As well as his teenage lobotomy book. He spent his childhood amongst the ruins of Berlin, or wherever. And it was rife with discarded Nazi SS German army equipment, bayonets and helmets and pins and uniforms and stuff, And so, with that comes a strange sort of authenticity to his exploration of the subject matter, almost its own strange juxtaposition as the song is filtered through a Jewish singer and drummer, Today Your Love, Tomorrow the World is pure tongue-in-cheek. There's that word again, pure tongue-in-cheek from someone with informed experience, bringing a grotesque hyperbole through the vocal cords of a Jew. The same could be said for the Dictators, all Jews from the Bronx, with their song Master Race Rock, which is a great song. If you've never listened to Dictators, Girl Go Crazy, masterpiece of a record, please check it out. So good. You can go read about the origin story of the logo for Kiss. It involved Ace Frehley, or the fact that Kiss is 50% Jewish, just like the Ramones. Gene's mother, like Tommy's parents, was also a Holocaust survivor. Gene himself is Israeli. And an interesting note, any merchandise that Kiss puts out in Germany has to have an altered logo because of the laws there. They have very strict laws. Did you know that it's illegal to buy a swastika in Germany? Did you know that? Did all of you know that? Did all of you know that? Huh? Every one of you? Did you know that? Did you know that it's illegal to buy a swastika in Germany? Doesn't matter the reason why you wanted to buy it. But that it's illegal. Totally illegal. How do you think Germans would react to something like that? The culture is not the same, Germans and Austrians. I think that, there's some, they understand the gravity of this stuff in a way that Americans do not, And so when I was reading the comments on, in a chat, whatever, a thing, horror punk Germany thing, the conversation, the tone of the discourse in the comment thread was so different from what I was seeing from, Americans. It was fascinating to me. It made a lot of sense, but it was interesting. They saw this in a completely different light than the way that Americans saw it. The culture is just not the same. And Germans, as well as other Europeans, seem much more dialed in this way that I am. I'm dialed in the same way as Europeans and Germans and just all of them, but the use had no intention behind it. I'm talking about Ace Frehley, the SS logo in Kiss. It was merely the circumstance of Ace Frehley's handwriting on the spot. Ace Frehley wrote, they had posters. The band used to be called Wicked Lester, right? The band was called Wicked Lester. And he wrote over a Wicked Lester poster, he wrote Kiss. And in his handwriting, he wanted to make the S's like thunderbolts, but they ended up looking like, an SS Thunderbolts, which probably maybe either consciously or subconsciously, who knows, with Ace Frehley, had to do with, the fact that he had an interest in collecting that stuff in the same way that, Lemmy did, and whatnot. But, I don't think there was any intention behind it. It's a circumstance of this handwriting. And if there was a similar cultural backlash in America, the way that there is in Germany, or, that there were laws where you couldn't buy swastika, just so you know, you can't buy swastikas when you're in Germany. It's really frowned upon. It's super illegal and it's really frowned upon. So you should not buy swastikas when you're in Germany. Shit. Huh. Why is it doing that? I'm losing power. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay. Anyway, just so we're clear. I imagine that Kiss would have thought twice about altering that logo, especially if it hurt one of the three B's: their brand, their band, or their back end, right? Much like the punk movement, you have various bands from different genres in metal that have also flirted with all sorts of fascist and or adjacent imagery, for better or for worse, as a means of shocking and crass, as a means of shocking, crass expression. Once again, there is nuance and subjectivity and compartmentalization, particularly when you think about a guy like Lemmy from Motorhead. And, guess what? I don't agree with most of it, but I also can't explain how it all exactly works. I don't have all the answers. I really don't. But one thing that comes to mind when I think about those metal bands who do something similar and the punk bands and all this, is the thing that comes to mind is malice versus shock and surprise. How intentional is the use of something? In what way is it being used? How are hate groups responding to this use? And now here's the thing. Again, we talked about how intention doesn't matter because perception is what matters. And that's a key element too. We should highlight that, that perception is just as important as the intention, because, as they say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, or benign intentions or innocent intentions. The Black Sun situation has proved to be a profound and interesting anthropological or sociological litmus test of identity politics. I know that was a lot to digest. Basically, what I'm saying is it's a litmus test of identity politics. That's basically what I'm saying. I've creeped and I've lurked and I've read a ton of comments from all the different shades of Misfits, Samhain, and Danzig fandom. And I see so many who conflate this as some sort of conservative, liberal, black and white thinking tug of war. It's so strange to me. Like, what a weird way to sort of frame this. So many chalk this up to, hey, Danzig is into evil stuff, blah, 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 blah. And, I guess that does, fit into this category. Sort of a lot of it is, hey, man, like, why are you like even like paying attention to this? The more you talk about it, the more it's going to linger, as if the obligation was on me to stop talking about it. It's not on Glenn Danzig for being like, hey, it's going to be so funny. I'm going to put the Black Sun and everybody's going to be like, why did he do that? Why did he do it? You know why? Because I don't give a fuck. Because I do what I want. Because I'm Glenn Danzig, Like, I mean, like, come on. What? Uh-oh. Sorry, I thought my daughter woke up. That would have sucked. Why is that? Why is that on us, the fans? We should just not talk about this. We should just sort of sweep this under the rug, or don't get so butthurt. Don't be so sensitive. Don't take it so literally. Oh, it's really this. There's also, again, the whataboutism, like the examples above. All of this stuff are attempts to rationalize, dismiss, or justify that this with other bands and their actions that they have taken, and I see it in so many of these online conversations. People are literally breaking their backs to find other examples to excuse Glenn. This example of Slayer's logo, or the example of Metallica members, they're doing they're goofing off backstage, or being idiots backstage, doing Nazi salutes, or, the very Jewish Paul Stanley dressed as a Nazi. That's right. There's a photo of Paul Stanley, a Jew dressed as a Nazi with Peter Criss in red communist like leather, like kind of like how the New York Dolls were, or the band logo, or, that the dude collected stuff. How does any of this excuse Glenn Danzig? Does it cancels it out, or does it make it okay for you to accept it unquestioned because those other guys got away or skirted by or went unnoticed, like, oh, it's no big deal because these other guys did it and nobody cared when they did it, because you're pointing out what you consider to be unfair hypocrisy. That's what you're really saying. You're saying it's a hypocrisy and therefore it doesn't count. We can what about until the cows come home. And speaking of cows, let's talk about farms for a minute. What? Why are we talking about farms? Yeah, we're going to talk about farms. I have another hypothetical. It's a thinking man's question. Okay, ready? This is like a thought exercise for you. This is what I have seen a lot of online. Truly, imagine sitting in a room with 25 people with no identifying markings on their persons, meaning like there's nothing that signifies, where they fall tribally, in whatever way, shape, or form. Everybody is talking about something or other. In this case, for this example, how about this? We're talking about farms. We're talking about farming. Everybody's talking about farming, okay? And then without warning, someone stands up and shouts, "Horse fucking is wrong." That's right. Horse fucking is wrong. Following that, 11 of the people in this hypothetical room stand up and get outraged that you are criticizing farms and farming. They call you too sensitive, or that you're a social justice warrior, or that you're butthurt, or that, you're too woke, or that you found something, you're always finding blah, 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 blah. Here's my question, though. What does horse fucking or the defense of horse fucking have to do with farming? Speaking out or finding a problem with one of your favorite musicians using a neo-Nazi symbol commissioned by Hitler's left-hand guy and based on an older ancient symbol is not an attack on conservatives or Republicans. To watch so many associate the notion of being a liberal or a cuck or whatever, a social justice warrior, with speaking out about the use of neo-Nazi symbols being sold on t-shirt merch is utterly fascinating to me. How do you jump from one to the other? This is a lack of awareness. Not everybody has the same lived experience. Remember what I said before? It's everybody has a different perspective. People from all walks of life see things from different perspectives, especially minority populations and marginalized peoples. This is key, what I'm about to say. This is what I've noticed. There is an overwhelming lack of empathy and compassion for concerned points of view from people like myself, a Jew, who might be affected by differently by stuff like this. So you're not bothered by a neo-Nazi symbol on a Danzig shirt. To me, as a Jew, and I imagine for other marginalized or minority populations, although some would argue that Jews are not marginalized, but we most certainly are a minority. I'll tell you that much. There's only 15 million Jews, 15.5 million Jews in the world. Okay. Very small population, right? Like nobody seems to care that maybe somebody from such a small population might think differently about stuff like this. They just are oblivious. It's being completely oblivious. And it reminds me of an experience that I had a while back. Here's another story. I was speaking over the phone with a good friend who was Italian about Columbus Day and what it means to him and other Italian Americans. I am very familiar with the atrocities committed by Columbus and how having a holiday in his name has angered and affected indigenous peoples, so much so that an Indigenous Peoples Day was elected to be observed on October 13th, the same day, kind of as like a way of overriding Columbus Day. And there's sort of like a push-pull, between these two communities, and there's a lot of hurt and generational ancestral trauma that exists today because of Christopher Columbus and his monstrous actions going back hundreds of years, man. My friend went on to explain the holiday's origins, and these were origins that I was not aware of. I had never heard this before. There were massacres and lynchings of Italians in the late 19th century by angry mobs, and even the KKK. And what was interesting was, because I had never heard this before, it was interesting to hear his perspective as he explained it to me, that, it wasn't about honoring Columbus, but it was about honoring Italian Americans and feeling pride for their heritage. Columbus was chosen as the totem for that, So now you have these two holidays representing two different people on the same day regarding their heritage. There's like a nuanced perspective from both sides, angry, frustrated, and hurt over the meaning and intention. And I can tell you, I see both perspectives. And I am not an arbiter of judgment, and it is not my place or my obligation to definitively weigh in on it, especially because I'm not indigenous, I'm not an indigenous person, I'm not a Native American, I'm not Italian. And that's what's so amazing about this experience that's happening right now. I see so many people who are weighing in and telling me as a Jew how I should feel or how anybody should feel about this, And then all you got to do is just look at the profile picture. Sorry. Where was I? I lost my place. Here's the thing. All I can do is listen and learn and feel empathy and compassion, because like I said, I'm not Italian. I'm not an indigenous person, Native American. I don't have to be an arbiter of judgment in a situation. It's not my place to, definitively weigh in on it. in that particular instance, but listening and learning and understanding another perspective, you know, is important. And, hearing my friend explain the weight and importance of Columbus Day for his people really impacted me. And it changed my previous outlook. I went from thinking like in the back of my mind, like, ugh, like, Columbus Day, like it's, so problematic, blah, 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 to understanding a perspective that I didn't understand before from, the people who celebrate Columbus Day. I suddenly understood that like it's not so black and white, that it's actually quite nuanced, and that there's another perspective to consider. And to be honest, I wish that more people in the punk, rock, metal communities discussing this current controversy, over, oh, you shouldn't be so sensitive. Don't, you're making a mountain out of nothing, could practice more of that empathy and compassion over perspectives that they may not understand. What has been far more shocking and disappointing to me is that reaction of the fans, who are upset over the criticism of a neo-Nazi symbol. That's what's crazy to me. To watch so many people get upset. They're upset. Like, it would be one thing if you're like, I can, like, hey, I can see why this is so upsetting to you, and like I can appreciate that. I really don't think that's going on, but I understand, blah, blah, blah. But to see so many people go, oh man, it's like a woke virus. It's like, social justice warrior, blah, libtard, blah, 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 blah. It's so stupid. It's so stupid to me. It's just like, I don't understand that. I really do not understand that. Where is your empathy and compassion? Why are you upset over criticism of a neo-Nazi symbol? Like, that's so weird. At the end of the day, it's a deflection. It's a means to defend conservative identity politics, about being offended about cancel culture by transforming the conversation and steering it in the wrong direction. So suddenly the conversation is no longer about like, hey, we all agree neo-Nazi symbols suck and are terrible. And why is our, beloved artist that we love so much using one on a t-shirt design? Like, that's really shitty. And instead the conversation is like, oh, like neo-Nazi symbols are okay. Like, there's nothing wrong with the neo-Nazi symbol. Oh, it's a Viking symbol. It's a pagan symbol. It's a blah, 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 blah. Even though there is plenty out there, just Google it, man. This particular symbol was specifically designed by the Nazis. It is and adopted by neo-Nazis. So some people are like, well, it's also used by pagans and Vikings and things. Like, okay, great. But it's also the fucking symbol of neo-Nazis. Like, that's like saying like, sorry, I'm going a little off my script here. That's like saying like, oh, you see this piece of bread? Only, this part's like poisoned, but this part's fine. You could just nibble on this side of the bread, okay? You won't get poisoned if you nibble on this side of the bread. But this side of the bread is very poisoned, but just don't worry about that side of the bread. Just nibble on this side. Everything will be okay. It's deflection. It's deflection. For some reason, this is, and again, this going back to, this is, somehow conflating the fucking of horses with farming. Horse fucking does not equate to farming. I'm sorry. It just does not. Being upset over a neo-Nazi symbol does not equate to conservative identity politics. I see people with comments, Trump, you're just upset Trump won. Like, just like stuff like that. It's like, what? What is that? Like, what does that have to do with anything? You're just woke. You're just overly sensitive. What? I can't get over it, man. I can't get over it. But let's get right to the meat of it, right? Shit, I know I lost my place. And of all things, picking a neo-Nazi symbol, it's a really weird hill to die on in that regard. That's the truth. It's a weird hill to die on. That's what you're picking. That's where you're putting your pitchfork down in the ground. And you're like, nope, neo-Nazi symbols. Like, because at the end of the day, whatever other definition you're giving to that symbol, it's also a neo-Nazi symbol. Like, that's what I mean. The piece of bread. Well, this part isn't poisoned. Like the fucking it's poison, dude. I can tolerate, overlook, rationalize, and compartmentalize all of the examples of Glenn's imagery and lyrics that I listed earlier, some of it more than others, right? But seeing pictures on Reddit of the Black Sun merch made my eyes roll to the back of my head so hard. To reiterate what I said at the beginning, it's not so surprising that Glenn would do something like this. Oh yeah, wait until they get a load of this. I'm so edgy. I do what I want. Fuck them. Blah, 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 blah. Great job, Glenn. Like, really great job. So again, what makes this different for me than from the other things? Well, it's the response from the neo-Nazis, of course, on a neo-Nazi website, reminding me very much of the response of the Proud Boys after Michael Graves decided that he was a member. Various Proud Boys took the Crimson Ghost that I have tattooed on my arm right here, that all of us have tattooed on our bodies in some way, shape, or form, or, emboldened on the t-shirts that we wear, the bumper stickers and the hats and whatnot, and they customized it in black and gold, kind of like their Fred Perry shirts, and shared it around on Twitter. Other people started putting the KKK hood on the Crimson Ghost. Now you're starting to see all the Danzig memes, all the Nazi Danzig memes that are coming out, and here's what I thought. Here's what I thought when I saw it about Michael Graves. And here's what I thought when I saw it about Glenn Danzig. I thought to myself, how shitty, how utterly shitty. The thing that I love so much, that is so completely part of the fabric of my being, is sort of co-opted and corrupted in a way that I would not want to be associated with it, literally, because I have it bonded to my skin, and this is when for me, when like I felt the gravity of the situation. This is when it was for me. You want to see when that was? I'm going to show you. This is when I had this is when I had the realization right here. Okay. Look at this. This is called Volk News. Okay. Volk News. This is a neo-Nazi website. Glenn Danzig confirms he's one of our guys. And then of course this word right here, as you can see, that word right there. And look over here. What do we have? We have the Black Sun symbol that they have, and of course it's for Lone Wolf Radio 24/7, because if you need and they also have, of course, they have their own Bitcoin here called Volkcoin. But here, let's hear what they say. This is written by a guy named Johnny Doomsayer. Glenn Danzig has been playing some shows recently. On March 29th at Inglewood, California's Kia Forum, where fans went to buy merch, they discovered Danzig's new poster and t-shirts were depicting a Sonnenrad. That's the name of this symbol over here, the sun, right? Here you go. Boom. And this, again, this is designed by Himmler, right? It's designed by Himmler. Okay. Those are supposed to be like SS spokes, and all of them make up swastikas, whatever. And it's not just a poster. It's also printed on t-shirt. Look, you got a t-shirt, you got a poster. This is being sold. This is Danzig merchandise being sold, right? And what's interesting to me? Imagine the kid that doesn't know what that is, right? Because it's kind of subversive. Like you really have to kind of know what it is in order to know what it is. Well, imagine that some kid buys this t-shirt for $40, and then they're like, yeah, Danzig, Misfits, Samhain, and they go to a punk show wearing their Danzig shirt, proudly wearing their Danzig shirt, and some punks who do recognize what that symbol is beat the ever-living shit out of them. Just beat them up, like, rough them up. Maybe he's 15 years old, Maybe he's 16 years old. Who knows? This is a hypothetical. Obviously, I'm sort of making a hypothetical here, but like, how shitty is that? You know, like, I'm not saying that that's directly Glenn Danzig's fault, particularly, you know, but like, he kind of like, I mean, he would have been, he's the engineer of the situation. He puts this design on a shirt, kid buys it. You know, it's just shitty. It really is shitty. You know, I heard from someone else who already, um, you know, who's a t-shirt connoisseur, I should say. And they told me like, hey, I'm, you know, I'm going to be going around the country soon, the States, and I'm not taking any Misfits, Samhain, or Danzig shirts with me. I usually always rock them. I love wearing them. I'm not doing that. I am so afraid that, you know, he's going to be around a lot of punk rock communities, and he just does not want to. He wants to nip it in the bud. So he's already avoiding wearing his stuff. I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen. I'm not going to stop wearing my stuff particularly, but it's just like, this is where this shit leads. Did you ever hear the story about the it's on Reddit? It's kind of like I don't know if it's a copy pasta, but it's a great little, you know, it's kind of like Aesop's fable a little bit. It's like an Aesop's fable, right? It's about a bartender who sees a Nazi walks in. This sounds like a setup of a joke. A Nazi walks into a bar, sits down at the bar. Nazi is super polite, orders a drink, and the bartender I'm paraphrasing the story, so maybe I'm getting it wrong. Bartender goes up to the Nazi, or goes up to someone else, and he's just like, "Get the fuck out of my bar. Just go." And someone else says like, "Hey, like, why were you that guy was really polite. Like, sure, maybe he was, you know, an leaning alt-right, or he was a Nazi or whatever, but like, he was a paying customer buying a drink. Like, he wasn't making any problems." And he goes, and the bartender says, "Yeah, see, that's the problem. That's the problem is, you know, you let one brings in another one, and then pretty soon you got yourself a bar full of Nazis, you know, and then what kind of place is that?" You know? And so it's like, you can't give this thing any quarter. That's part of the problem, you know? I'm getting really off the rails. Let's keep reading this article. Let me look at this. Look at this thing. Blacklight poster. And then somebody posted, this was in Reddit. This is how I just heard about it, saw it. Nazi merch at the Danzig show last night. So he says here that Danzig has for years yelled, "You know what?" the sh at and given Romans, but this video, he's not saying that. He's saying Chicago motherfuckers. He's not saying what you think he's saying, and we've sort of debunked that is the situation. I kind of would find it really hard to believe that he would throw a Roman salute in front of Doyle and Jerry only. And that nobody would have noticed this. Like, I feel like everybody would have noticed if that was truly what it was. So this guy is reading into that a little bit here. He says, "I have been a huge fan of Glenn Danzig in every band he's been in, and through all the interviews with him, I've seen he's expressed he's interested in the truth about National Socialist Germany. He's one of our guys, 110%. The Danzig design is fucking awesome. I wish I could get a shirt for myself." Oh, there is an update. This I did not know. Oh no, it's just about fans call out. Yeah, right. So now it's making the press junket, right? And he's quoting White Devil's Rise here. Now, and then welcome to my book collection. See how and so now all of a sudden, this thing that I love, it's like infiltrated, it's co-opted, it's suddenly, you know, it's not, you know, it's being corrupted in a way. For me, I don't know. It's horrible. It's fucking horrible. So to see this on a neo-Nazi site really disturbed me, because, you know, you look at a band like, I don't want Glenn Danzig to become Screwdriver. You know, that's what it is at the end of the day. Like, I don't want that. I don't want that. Glenn thinking he's being, you know, edgy and whatever, doing whatever the hell that he thinks he's doing. You know, I don't want him to turn into Screwdriver. Who wants that? Let me get back to the rest of this. What Glenn did for me was he crossed a line, you know, and it was lame. Read the room, Glenn. This right now, like this, it's boring. It's tired. It's not edgy. Why not go make another movie or go make a new record or something? Playing shows and creating neo-Nazi merch. Instead, you have neo-Nazis that are claiming him for their own. What does that mean exactly? Here's my other question. Have these guys claimed the Ramones? Did they claim Motorhead? Did they claim Kiss? Here's the big question. Is Glenn Danzig a neo-Nazi? I really, really don't think so. In fact, I read something online that really sort of made me feel a great sigh of relief. Apparently at one of the shows, the recent shows during Killer Wolf, he dedicated Killer Wolf to all of the Native American people in the audience. I thought that, reading that made me really happy. I don't think it's, it would be too easy to say that Glenn Danzig is a neo-Nazi. I don't think so. I think Glenn Danzig is just being a giant fucking asshole. That's what I think, but here's the thing. It's not the 70s or the 80s anymore. Glenn Danzig is not an angry 20-something kid who's got something to say. He's a grumpy 70-year-old millionaire who lives in LA, and frankly, like I said, I don't think he's a neo-Nazi. I don't think he's a Nazi. I don't think he's a white supremacist, but I most certainly do not want to know whatever is rattling around in parts of 70-year-old old man Danzig's mind. I don't. I've said that before on the show. I don't want to know. I really don't at this point. Doing this, it looks pathetic and desperate. It's a pathetic and desperate attempt to be tongue-in-cheek and edgy and out of touch, especially in light of our current political climate over the last 10 years. There's no other place but America where you would find people who don't give a shit about something as long as it doesn't personally affect them. As long as it doesn't personally affect you, I don't care. I don't care that you are disturbed by a neo-Nazi sign. In fact, you shouldn't be so butthurt. You shouldn't be so sensitive. You're just being woke. You're a cuck. You're a this, you're a that. You're butthurt. But what's funny is these people are literally doing the exact same thing. Like that's literally what they are encompassing by, they're projecting it, like, why do you have such a problem with me posting to my page, this sucks? I think this design sucks. Did I go around posting it everywhere? Did I go around sharing it and invading all these spaces? No, I posted particularly in my avenues. Why does that bother you so much? Here's my takeaway from the situation. I don't really need to worry about what Glenn says or does at this point for whatever attention or trolling or whatever the fuck this is, because here's the thing. Discovering the Misfits as a teenager was a life-changing moment for me, as I'm sure it was for everyone else. I found this music that sort of helped define aspects of myself that, don't fit in with what mainstream society wanted me to be, or what my parents wanted me to be, or what anybody wanted me to be, and I suppose that's the power of punk rock as a whole. As I've said here on the show before, hearing this guy with this amazing voice singing about how, he turned into a Martian, or that he was a teenager from Mars and didn't care, after I grew up being called, as a child, people called me a Martian. People call me Gonzo. They called me all sorts of things. And so to be 15 and listening to this guy go, I turned into a Martian. Whoa, wow. Whoa, teenagers from Mars and we don't care. Yeah, I'm a teenager from Mars. That's right. It's okay. We don't care. I felt seen. To find others who feel the same affinity for this stuff. We got to have our own secret club. When I sing out loud, I want your skull, someone else responds, I need your skull. They know. When 138 randomly turns up somewhere And I pointed out only one of you will understand my compulsion, right? We all, 138. You see it all the time. Everybody's always posting, oh, look, it's on my receipt. It said 138, you know? Or how about this? Every explanation or reason can be summed up with it's about violence, you know? And most certainly, if you don't know the name of the song, what the fuck are you doing here? You know, this thing that Glenn Danzig created, the bands, the imagery, the iconography, the attitude, the songs, their music and the lyrics, the punk rock DIY spirit, it doesn't just belong to Glenn. It belongs to all of us who love it and have formed communities of fandom around it, you know? And here's the thing, we will carry it with us long after Glenn Danzig shuffles loose his mortal coil and takes a long way back to hell. Because, you know, one day Glenn will die, but what he created, it's going to live on. And it's ours. It's ours to carry on with us, a legacy of brutality, you know? I learned not so long ago. This is one of the most recent lessons that I learned in my life. I learned not so long ago that I have to refuse to lose joy when the things that I love have rough corners that make them hard to handle. Okay? I have to refuse to lose joy. I'm not going to lose joy when something that I love has rough corners that make it hard to handle, you know? Because there, you know, life can be really tough. And, you know, the things that do bring us joy, like, you know, to deprive ourselves of the things that bring us joy, like that's no fun. That's not good. In closing, I have one more story that brings me to a topic that I've alluded to, but I've never really discussed in depth. And I'm going to go off. I'm going to raw dog this one, as the kids are all now saying, raw dog it. I'm going to raw dog this. I don't have anything written down for this. I'm just going to tell the story. And it's a personal story. Like all my stories on here are personal, but it's really important to me. And I think it really sort of applies to my attitude, you know, kind of going forward from here in this. You know, I'm still a fan of all this stuff and I'm going to still do shows. This isn't like me digging my heels and going, fuck Glenn Danzig and fuck all this. I needed to like talk about this. I need to like work through this because for me, it really does. It bothers me. It does fucking bother me. You know, it does bother me. I want to tell you all about Nobody. Some of you might know Nobody. I'm gonna talk about Nobody. Hold on one second. Un momento. This is Nobody. Okay. Nobody is the alter ego of a guy named Justin Champlin. And Justin is a musician who he came out of the, I don't know what you want to call it, like the garage punk movement. You know what I mean? He came out of the, I don't know what you want to call it. Yeah. Garage punk, like the budget rock kind of scene. He had a bunch of different bands. He had a band called Sneaky Pinks and, you know, but he had a band called the Achmonics that are still around without him. He was the drummer. But he was most known for his alter ego, Nobody. And, you know, I don't know if you remember MySpace music. Like that was the way I discovered a bunch of, in fact, you know, this is crazy. I first heard about Calabrese on MySpace, right? I've probably messaged them once or twice. They put out that video for that song. What I forget the video. What's that big song? Whatever their big song. That video. It's a really fun video where all the different monsters are in it. That's also where I first heard about Blitzkid. I found Blitzkid on MySpace, or at least they became. They were on my radar probably sometime in like 2007. And that's also when I found No Bunny. No Bunny, he was just this fucking weirdo who wore a bunny mask and and tidy whities and a leather jacket. And he was just a strange fucking, kind of pseudo cross-dressing weirdo. And, and I just was really into his music. I just really, really liked his, it was called like, uh, garage punk, bubblegum pop, whatever. I don't know. That record, Love Vision's one of my favorite records of all time, top to bottom, soup to nuts. And a few years later, I found out that Justin was a fan of the Misfits, which makes sense. And I interviewed him for my Misfits documentary that I was working on many years ago. I used as an excuse. I reached out to him and I was like, "Hey man, I want to interview you." And I remember he came up and he didn't look like this at all. This is all, he's bald and, he wears like a wig with just a strange dude, a really strange dude, really nice dude. And we talked about the Misfits and he gave me passes to his show and I saw them live. And every time that Justin came back to New York, I never missed a No Bunny show. I went to all the No Bunny shows and they were just raunchy, crazy, high energy shows, man. Like the pits, whatever you want to call them, were insane. There's photos online. You can go see some video on YouTube, tons and tons of video on YouTube. And for about 15 years, Justin really made a name for himself as this alter ego. And he started to get bigger and bigger. And he put out some records. He put out some singles. And like I said, every time he would come to New York, I knew him, as an acquaintance, and we would always hang out and chat, and I'd always buy merch. I was a big fan of No Bunny, just really big fan. And then in 2020, right? In 2020, right after Michael Graves, that whole Michael Graves thing happened, and Michael Graves identified as like a Proud Boy or something. This other scandal had been developing, and I didn't really talk about it much. I've talked about it here and there, but not really. No Bunny was a part of a scene called Burger Records. It was full of bands. It was full of bands, other garage rock bands. And you could read all about what happened with Burger Records. It was a reckoning. It was kind of like a Harvey Weinstein, Me Too takedown. The entire scene crumbled and collapsed. And a lot of bands went extinct. And, rightfully so, I guess. They all did some pretty fucked up shit. And there was an Instagram page that was dedicated to telling the stories of people who had, experienced horrible things. And there was one story that came out and it was just the worst one, like one of the worst ones. It was a terrible story. It was so bad. And right around this time was interesting about Justin. He settled down, he had a kid, and he seemed to really be changing. He was in therapy. He seemed to really be kind of turning over a different kind of leaf, or becoming very progressive in ways that maybe he didn't used to be. He used to have an Iron Cross tattoo right on his chest right here. And he got it covered up with a heart instead, that kind of thing. He had a swastika tattooed on his leg, but not, again, in a weird kind of, attempting to be like a Johnny Ramone or Ramone sort of, I don't fucking know, whatever, 70s punk, whatever. All of that to say that he really seemed to be changing, and everything that was kind of happening politically at the time, he was really charged up by that. And then all these stories started to fucking come out about these bands, and a lot of them just folded right then and there. And like I said, one of the stories was just, it was just a bad one. It was just really fucking bad. It was terrible. What what the woman who talked about it talked about something really terrible. And then in response to that story coming out, Justin made an announcement on his personal Facebook page and on the No Bunny Facebook page. And it's gone now. You can't see it because Justin deleted every bit of his social media. Justin disappeared 5 years ago. He's gone. He's not here anymore. He's just disappeared completely. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know if he, had legal issues or if he went to jail for what he did. I don't even want to repeat here what he did. You can go Google No Bunny and you'll find out. Google No Bunny and you'll know what happened. And he basically tried his best, I guess, to get out ahead of the situation. And he admitted in a public statement, like, he admitted to just a bunch of shit, to more than what he had been accused of, or when it eventually came out that he was the person that was being talked about in this story, one of the many stories. I'm sorry, it was an Instagram page that was outing that was collecting stories. You've seen it. Like, it's like a new thing. It's like a thing in the last, whatever, how many years. And so Justin was like, said something along the lines of like, this is the end of No Bunny. No Bunny must be destroyed. No Bunny must go away. And like, I'm going away. I'm retiring from music. And that knocked the wind out of me. It knocked the absolute wind out of me. This thing, I mean, I met people at those shows. It was a real fucking loss for me. A real fucking loss. I looked up to Justin. He was one of my heroes. And he meant the world to me. And he, just in the way that Glenn Danzig inspired me so much, and like Justin was such, like, he inspired me so much in so many ways. And then to find out that this guy I cared so much about and like appreciated and supported and just all this stuff, to find out that he had done these really monstrous, terrible things, and that he was, destroying this beautiful creation that he had built, which was No Bunny, which was this guy, and like summer of 2020, that was it. He just nuked his social media. Nobody ever heard from him again. I don't think I've heard in 5 years. I don't think I've heard a stitch. And I'm kind of like, I have like ears in all of those communities, and, even third party people who I know him, maybe closer than I do, asking about him, and just nothing. And so here's what happened. Here was like kind of like the fallout. This is like what the fallout is of the situation. Okay. Here's the fallout of the whole thing. I stopped listening to No Bunny. I completely stopped. I used to put Love Visions on by No Bunny. I would put that record on when I was in a bad mood. It's 22 minutes long. When I was in a bad mood, I would put No Bunny on, No Bunny Love Visions, and I would just jump around my apartment or my house or whatever, and suddenly the world was okay again. It was like listening to that music, I like could be part of, like, I could be this authentic version of myself in the same way that I felt when I had heard the Misfits for the first time when I was 15, like I could really just sort of, I don't know, like let go of, maybe tension that I had in my life or whatever was going on. And then suddenly when Justin, admitted to these things and was accused of these things, it was like all that stuff that I had, all my whole, like everything went away. I couldn't listen to the music. It left such a negative, like, aura around me. I was like so destroyed. I couldn't sit and listen to this guy fucking singing, songs like Tastes Just Like a Milkshake. Suddenly so many of his songs took on new meaning. I Can't Wait, Brace Face. Oh my fucking God. Like these songs that I fucking love. And suddenly it's just all gone. And that was summer of 2020. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's it. It's just gone. So it's kind of interesting. Like that happened right around the time of the Michael Graves thing. And I didn't talk about it. I just I didn't know what to say. I remember a friend texted me like the website as the article as if I didn't fucking see it. Come on, man. As if I didn't fucking see it. And like nothing, like, hey man, sorry, like whatever. Just, I don't know. I don't know if he was like rubbing my face in or whatever, but it just made me so fucking sad. And so here's what happened. I mourned this fucking fictional guy, this nobody guy. I wasn't mourning Justin, although I was very disappointed in Justin, who I looked up to. I looked up to Justin. But I was just like, this whole thing that was just such a part of my life for the last however many years, which is gone all of a sudden. This thing that I used to identify myself, I got, nobody pins on my fucking hat, like that wear. Like, how am I supposed to wear this with pride? I can't. I fucking can't, dude. Like, just that fucking sucks. And so, but here's what happened. Here's what has happened. This is the takeaway from the story and how it relates to what is happening now a little bit. It was a profound lesson for me in my life when Justin went away, because as time passed, as the years passed, I started to really miss Nobody. I started watching lots of YouTube videos and watching the old shows, watching like videos that I had taken. I just started to really miss the atmosphere and the scene, like the whole thing. And I just was like, one day, but it felt like I couldn't listen to it for whatever reason. I don't know. It didn't feel good to me. And then one day I was having a bad day or something. I don't know what it was. And I was like, I need to listen to Love Visions, or I wonder what would happen if I put on Love Visions. And I put it on. And it was like all was right with the world. It was like, when you haven't listened to a record in a long fucking time, and suddenly you put on that record and you listen to it and you're like, hey, like, oh my God, there's my old friend that was there all those years. And now it's like, it never went away. It was right fucking there. And it was a very important, like, watershed moment for me, because I realized then and there that, Justin is gone, and, whatever. And I don't know where Justin is today. And, I don't know if he paid for his crimes or whatever happened to him. I don't know. I certainly feel for his wife and his son. And I hope that I hope that they're okay. But I realized I was like, fucking nobody is still nobody. Nobody is not Justin. Nobody is its own thing. And from that moment on, I started listening again. And I was really able to really sort of reconnect with the music, even though like it's all gone now. And I was like, wow, like I can't believe I let what happened to Justin get in the way of my relationship with this music, and like the feeling of joy and the feeling of empowerment and the feeling of, fun that I had from having this music, and that's why what I said at the end of my little written spiel, it doesn't matter what Glenn Danzig says or does. It doesn't matter if Glenn Danzig's being an asshole or trolling or whatever. It doesn't matter what he does. Like, that music and that band, 77 to 83, whatever, Samhain, like it will always be there. It's encapsulated in time, like ice. You know what I mean? It's frozen in ice forever. And I can always revisit it at any time I want to, you know? And so I'm not going to let this thing, you know, as a Jew, as someone who's very much a fucking anti-fascist, whatever, I'm not going to let that shit bother me. We're going to keep fucking talking about the fucking Misfits or Samhain. We're going to keep analyzing the lyrics. We'll keep doing whatever. I don't fuck it, whatever. Who cares? Honestly, who fucking cares? So if you waited an hour and 44 minutes for me to just say, fuck it, who cares? Like, that's what I wanted to get to. But, you know, the best thing I could have done was starting to, you know, listen to Nobody again. That was like the best thing I could have done. And, you know, maybe I needed to go through me personally. Maybe I needed to go through that. Like I needed to go through that sort of separation or that isolation from this thing, only to realize like what really matters and like what's important and like what, you know, why it means what it means to me, you know? And so Justin is gone. I don't know where he is, whatever, but Nobody is still here. And, you know, maybe there's a way for Nobody to come back in some way. I don't know. Maybe he could be resurrected somehow. I'll tell you, the movie I'm making right now is actually kind of inspired. The monster is inspired by Nobody. So the monster is a bunny rabbit. That's who Shadow is in my Shadow. But that's another subject for another day. That's it. That's the show. I'm dead from all that. I don't even think I have the bandwidth to look through all these fucking comments. There's a lot of comments here. I hope it was civil. I mean, I guess that's the show, right? I feel pretty good. Oh, wow. I'm already seeing some of these comments. Yeah, wow. Oh, boy. Yeah, maybe it's better that we don't look in the comments. How did I do? Was that, I mean, that was pretty concise, right? We didn't really deviate too much. I mean, the Nobody thing at the end was a whole other track, but it feels good to talk about that, you know? Feels really good to talk about that actually, because it's been so long. It really has. It's been so fucking long. Yeah, there's just too many fucking comments here. I can't go through all this now. I do see one thing. Yeah, you want to know something? I do want. I want Glenn, make your your werewolf bicycle, your bicycle werewolf movie, your biker werewolf. I think I did. Hey, I think I did my conclusions. Well, thank you, John of Doom. I think I did my conclusion. My conclusion was Nobody. That was my conclusion. My conclusion is like, you know, like it's not like, oh, you know, one question. Yes, I am Jewish. If you got to watch the show. I must have said like eight or nine times that I'm a Jew. I don't know. Why does that matter? Why are you asking? Well, it does matter because I was talking about why it matters, but whatever. No, the Nobody thing, that was the conclusion. That was the conclusion. That was the summing up of this. You know, we're gonna keep going business as usual and, you know, whatever. But you know, that did fucking suck. That sucked, you know, straight up. The ranch is still here. That's what's important. Oh, wow. See, look at this. He asked me one question: are you Jewish? And then, K, I'm out. Wow. I'm not going to repeat that, what he said there. Oh, fuck. Dude, let me tell you something about Michael Jackson, man. I fucking love Michael Jackson. I've never stopped listening to Michael Jackson. Um, I do think that Michael Jackson is guilty of some pretty heinous shit, and that he never paid for whatever crimes he may have committed. I don't know if that was ever proven definitively in a court of law, but man, I fucking love Michael Jackson's music and his dancing and all that. Eric sums it up really nicely. Yes, it is kind of embarrassing to be a Danzig fan right now. Yes, that's the best way. That is the best way to sort of like put it. I would say that's the best way. Yeah, I don't know. It's actually been embarrassing to be a Danzig fan since the 2000s, but this is a new low. Thank you. You think I did okay? Thank you. I thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate it. I'm getting text messages. I don't know. I'll look at them in a minute. Oh my God. See, look at this. Did Glenn get Jewed by the Kia for him? Disgusting. Ugh. This is what happens when you talk about this stuff and people. Ugh. I got big visible Danzig tats on my arms. Gonna have to wear long sleeves this summer. Yeah, I don't know. I don't fucking know. I mean, I still don't. I'm really glad I said all that. I'm glad I did this show, and I'm glad I said everything that I had to say. So I don't know. Yes, nobody was in the Achmonics. Nobody was the drummer, man. He was the original drummer of the band. Oh, yeah. Voices of the Dead is the Calabrese song. Thank you. Yeah, some of these comments are terribly friggin' stupid. Yeah. Oh. I'm not gonna I'm sidestepping some of these comments. I'm not even gonna respond to some of them. Are really dumb. Yeah, there was the Confederate flag thing was really stupid. And you know what's interesting about that? I thought that it got pulled. Like he stopped selling that. And I always assumed that was because like, you know, there was this period of time between the year, I want to say like 2011 to about 2015ish in the United States of America, where you had like this sudden, it was like a sudden wide spanning cultural, like consciousness, like a wake up call, where maybe it was like, it had to do with like a lot of statues being taken down and stuff. Like people suddenly were like, newsflash, the Confederate flag is a really, really bad flag. You know, it always would get written off. You'd see it in all sorts of popular media in that the Confederate flag was, oh, it's just Southern heritage, Southern pride, you know, this, that, and the other, that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden it was like, whoa, like you do realize that a Confederate flag is like, it's like a Nazi flag for black people. Like it is like, it's not a great flag, you know, it's not a good flag at all. And then that design disappeared. And I always was like, okay. So even though Danzig is the way, you know, Danzig is Danzig, like, you know, at least he had some common sense to pull that design, you know, but clearly maybe it was the Dukes of Danzig. Maybe it was not on purpose. Maybe it was like completely coincidental in that he just didn't give a shit. I don't know. I mean, obviously he didn't give a shit. Let's see. You like the art, leave the artist is the way it is sometimes. Frumess feel. Yeah. 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 Um, you're a pretty level-headed guy. It's good to know your perspective on this whole thing. Thank you. I appreciate that. I don't know. I just think that like I just think to like here's like the thing. Like if I had like not like said anything and I just kept doing these shows, I think it would have just been such a, talk about like being a cuck. That would have been a cuck thing to do, just like to stay quiet. I understand. Listen, there are some people that are quiet because they're confused and they don't understand and they don't know where, like, Glenn hasn't said anything and he's not going to say anything. He's going to probably fucking stay quiet about it. He's not going to do anything. He's gonna, double down on it, maybe even. Um, I just think, I just think like, I just think like, you know, it's like a position, a stance, is something needed to be said because, we'll do shows in the future talking about Danzig related stuff and someone will bring it up. What am I going to do? Just pretend that it didn't fucking happen or that it doesn't exist? Skirt by it like the way, like with the other stuff. I know, it's funny. I was doing the Samhain lyrics things a while back, and I get to Lords of the Left Hand. I'm like, fuck this song, man, because I love the music to Lords of the Left Hand, but I'm like listening to the lyrics. I'm like, oh my god, he's written this from the perspective of Nazis. It's like all the times I was bopping my head to this song when I was younger, not knowing what the lyrics were. I'm like, he's singing about like at war with the planets, like, oh Jesus Christ, I don't know, just fucking really fucking stupid. Really, really fucking stupid. But I don't think there's going to be a lot of any more dialogue, you know. And I'll tell you this too, like I'm not going to waste. Here's the other thing too. One last thing, I'm going to go because it's like fucking late. I'm not going to waste. I don't want to waste any fucking time on, people with the opposing perspective who aren't going to who aren't interested in understanding like why, I'm not interested at all. Like I don't have the energy to explain anymore. This was my explanation. This was me discussing it all. I did it. If you want to know what I think, just watch this video, right? That's really it. And I could see the comments are getting ridiculous again. So, all right. That's it. That's the show. Thank you so much. Peace. Hair grease. We'll see you again real soon. Okay. Bye-bye.